Sir, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clear and loud. I hope it is good.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being on our project.
I'm very excited about this and honored that you would include me.
No, so it is our pleasure that you have been and you have decided to be a part of our project. You have been a New York Times best-selling author of Hardwiring Happiness and Buddha's Brain. You are a visiting professor at University of California, San Diego. You are a senior fellow of Greater Good Science Center at University of California, Berkeley. And you have given a keynote speech at American Psychological Association. And we would very much love to have you on our project, sir. Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
So should we start with it?
Yes, please. Let's do this.
Yeah, please. Okay, so there is this general conception of happiness and well-being, and sometimes we are not able to differentiate between them. Is there a difference between them, or are they both same?
The terms are a little loose. They're not a technical term like in physics, but the meaning basically is that happiness goes up and down, moment to moment over the day. Well-being is more stable, and it's more what is happening deep down inside your core. A person with well-being can feel sad at something bad happening to a friend, or a person with well-being can worry about a health problem, but in the core of their being, there's a fundamental strength and inner peace.
So well-being is permanent, whereas happiness might fluctuate.
I would say stable rather than permanent, but it's more stable.
More stable. And how should one strive towards the goal of well-being? What are the major benefits of well-being?
Excellent question. First, well-being feels good. So if we had a child or a friend or a teacher, we would wish that they would have well-being. Second, well-being makes people more effective. It makes them more able to deal with stress, more willing to take risks because they're more able to handle disappointment. And well-being tends to make people more cooperative and reasonable with other people. The other thing that well-being does is that it calms and strengthens the body, because stress wears down the body, well-being builds up the body. Studies show it protects the immune system, balances the hormones, helps our digestion, protects the heart. It's very good for our physical health. Research shows also that people who have more well-being literally live longer, not just because being healthy gives you well-being, but well-being makes you healthy. And then the last thing I would say is that if it's an interest to someone, in the essence of well-being, there is a sense of your needs met already inside yourself. So that as you face challenges of life, the waves keep coming at us, you feel already filled up and already balanced inside, rather than feeling like you are running on empty, as we say in America, like there's no more gas in your car. And when you feel that your needs are met in a deep, deep way, that reduces the craving, the drivenness, the anger, the fear, the clinging that the great spiritual teachers have pointed out for thousands of years creates so much suffering and harm for ourselves and other people.
So it is something that comes from inside.
Well-being is a psychological characteristic, but it's also very embodied. I think your question, if I get you right, is to what extent can we grow well-being ourselves? Yeah. And again, here research shows that about a third of the variation in the population of characteristics. So imagine a population distribution of well-being. About a third of what affects where people are is heredity, is their genetics, their DNA. The other 2/3 of what affects where people are is acquired. That means that we can harm people, we can lower their well-being, but it also means we can grow well-being inside ourselves. That 2/3 on average is under our own power in principle, and that is very hopeful.
Okay, so speaking about well-being, what are the major causes of well-being?
Great question. Some of the causes are outside of us. It is important to help our country, our society, other people we live with, the roof over our head. It is important to help those things to support well-being. But most of the factors that affect well-being, again, research shows, above a certain level of horrible poverty, war, being a refugee, terrible things happening to a person. But above that level, most of what affects well-being is inside your own mind. And that also is very hopeful because that's where you have the most influence. It is hard sometimes to affect the world outside, but you can affect what is happening in your mind every day, even in a bad situation. In fact, the worse a person's life situation is, and the less help they are getting from the outside, the more important it is for them to look for little ways every day to grow strengths inside that will bring them well-being.
So speaking from causes that you have talked about growing mental resources such as mindfulness, patience, compassion. You call them sometimes inner strength, sometimes psychological resources. What do you mean by mental resources?
Yeah. So, again, the way scientists think about this is that the path a person's life takes, up or down, is the result of three things: challenges, vulnerabilities, and resources. All are important. They are, all three are out in the world, in the body, and in the mind. All are important. But resources have a special opportunity. They're positive, you can grow them quickly, and also challenges and vulnerabilities are sometimes hard to affect. So now we have resources. And resources out in the world are things like a country that has a fair legal system or healthcare for its people. Resources in the body are things like a strong heart, good nutrition, enough food to eat. Resources in the mind, as you say, are things like compassion, resilience, and happiness. Happiness, positive emotion, is a very important mental resource. So we have resources out in the world, in the body, in the mind. Resources in the mind are the easiest to grow. And you take them with you wherever you go, because you take yourself with you in all your different situations. So that's why I think it's very important to focus on resources, especially mental resources. And two additional reasons to focus on mental resources are, one, it's motivating because it feels good to grow resources inside yourself. Most experiences of mental resources, I call them inner strengths, feel good. It feels good to be grateful. It feels good to be mindful. It feels good to feel confident inside. It feels good to feel that you are loved and that you love others. So growing resources motivates people. That's good. And then the last thing is that, the growing resources, besides being motivating, is something that draws people together. As people grow resources together, it builds their sense of community and relationship with each other.
So you have a book coming out in March about resilient.
Yeah.
That talks about growing mental resources. What is it, that book about? It is based on your course, The Foundations of Well-Being. What that book is all about?
Yeah, the book fundamentally is about growing strengths inside to be resilient. To be resilient means when the waves of life come at your boat shakes, but it does not tip over.
Okay.
And you do not drown. Life is constantly changing. Every living thing, whether it's a little tiny bacteria or an elephant or a whale or a human being, must constantly adapt to changing conditions, both to deal with threats and real problems, and also to keep pursuing your goals in the face of lots and lots of changes. So that's what resilience is, and resilience is a condition for long-term well-being. People can, if they're really protected and someone is brushing their hair, or they're eating some chocolate, it's easy to have well-being then. But how about when you're working with other people in a company, or trying to help your country get better, or you're dealing with your children, or a relationship. So we need to cope. We need to adapt. So that's very important for well-being. What's interesting is that the way to grow resilience is to use what I call positive neuroplasticity, which is to say have experiences of the resources we want to grow, and then hardwire those resources literally into your own brain, literally making changes in your own nervous system. So then through experiences of taking in these resources, it's like building muscles inside. Well, here's the thing. As you experience well-being, you're going to have more experiences of psychological resources, such as happiness or love or calm or confidence or self-worth. Therefore, much as resilience supports well-being, well-being supports resilience in a wonderful positive cycle. So what my book is about is using that wonderful positive cycle in an upward spiral. Growing more resilience to have more well-being, which grows more resilience, which gives you more well-being. That's what the book's about. And it is related to my Foundations of Well-Being program, which is online. And I should say that anyone with financial need can do it for free. We are quite happy for people who have some money. It's about $1 a day for a year, a US dollar. But still, that's a lot of money for some people. If anyone has a problem with that, no worries. We love giving out scholarships. So that's what the book's about, and that's what that Foundations of Wellbeing program is about too.
Thank you very much, sir, for bringing the Foundations of Wellbeing program here for every single one of us who really wants to make a deep change into his life. And on that note, are positive emotions like love, compassion, satisfaction, are they also mental resources?
Yes, very much so. Now, of course, a hammer is a tool, and you can use a tool for good or bad. So people can use just about anything for a bad purpose. And sometimes people use their own personal happiness, and often with wealth, to turn away from others. That's not a good use of happiness. But much research shows that happiness, for example, or love, makes us stronger, and also tends to help make us more loving and caring and interested in justice and peace with others.
But as the old adage goes, that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So aren't all those negative emotions, even them, mental resources? Aren't they also mental resources?
This is an extremely important point, and I'm really glad you brought it up. So, first of all, negative emotions are part of life. And if we fight them, we make them worse. So it's important to recognize that they are normal. We feel them. Feeling them is not itself a problem. Also, from a biological standpoint, we are very tough animals. We're at the top of the food chain for a reason. And it's normal for very powerful, sometimes very dark emotions to arise. All right, that's all very normal. So first off, I'm not talking about positive thinking. I'm not talking about pushing away normal negative emotions. We need to manage them. We need to regulate them. And there are various ways to do this, including with the strength of mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us to manage our negative emotions. Compassion for ourselves is another strength that helps us manage our negative emotions. Having well-being, helps us manage our negative emotions. Because if all you feel is negative emotion, you start drowning in it. But if you also feel well-being, you can, in effect, stand in your well-being looking at your negative emotion and make sense of it and not be hijacked by it, not be swept away by it. So that's the first point. We need to grow mental resources to deal with negative emotions inside ourselves as well as in other people. Okay? Second point. Certain inner strengths are only grown through pain. Yeah. I've had pain, lost my parents. I've done a lot of things in wilderness that have been very scary, very challenging. I'm a naturally shy person. And so learning how to do public speaking and going through the process of that was painful in some ways. And through the process of that, I'll call it pain or negative emotion, you're right. We grow certain strengths that only come through the fire, including the knowledge that you can survive something horrible. You have to go through something horrible to carry that confidence with you. Okay. On the other hand, negative experiences are always unpleasant and they're always stressful by definition. So there's a cost to them. There's always a cost to the negative experience. And the question becomes, could I get the benefit without the cost? And actually, most psychological resources are grown not through negative experiences, but through positive ones. Ordinary positive experiences of feeling connected with others, feeling that you are accomplishing things, feeling that you have worth, that you have a good heart deep down inside, gratitude, seeing the beauty around you, being grateful for the technology that lets us talk. 12,000, I have no idea, 15,000 kilometers away from each other. Those positive experiences are the major pathway to growing mental resources. Negative experiences are a pathway, but they're a fairly small pathway compared to the major pathway. Plus, negative experiences have a cost. Positive experiences don't have those costs. And then, it's worth asking ourselves, could I have gained the same psychological resources, mental resources, through a positive experience rather than through that negative one? And then the last point about it is that, let's tell the truth here, most negative experiences have no benefit. There's no learning. They don't make us stronger. They don't make us wiser. They don't make us more loving. They don't make us happier. It's pain with no gain. Yeah, and I think there's something very strange often in different cultures, different people who praise negative experiences. Given everything I'm saying here, which is factually true, I think to them, if you like negative experiences so much, do you want mine? They never say yes.
So on that note, is brain changed by both positive and negative experiences?
Our brain and our nervous system and our body is designed to be changed by the information flowing through it. And the function of the nervous system is to represent information, signals, meanings, learning, programs, software, basically. So it's a weak metaphor, but it's kind of useful. The brain and the body is the hardware, the mind is the software. Now, how the software, which is clear, it's clear that information is being stored, processed, transformed, and communicated throughout the entire nervous system. That's very standard science. How all that information becomes experience, becomes consciousness for humans or cattle or a cat or a squirrel or a little shrimp or a spider, that is still a great mystery. And it is also possible that for a full account of consciousness, particularly human consciousness, we must include some factor, perhaps, that is outside of the natural frame of physics, science, the material universe, which itself, of course, includes many exotic things like black holes, quantum entanglement, and all the rest of that. So I think it's a fundamentally scientific attitude to acknowledge that consciousness is still quite a mystery, and that it is possible that we must include transcendental factors outside of the natural frame for a full account. On the other hand, it's possible that consciousness is entirely a natural phenomenon, much as the Earth orbiting the Sun is a natural phenomenon. So it's in that context then that I'm going to talk about this. So briefly, the nervous system is designed to be changed by the information flowing through it, which means that, in effect, the hardware is designed to be changed by the software in a circular way. So negative experiences and positive experiences change the brain. Negative experiences have a special impact. Our ancestors, for 600 million years, as the nervous system was evolving, life, as you know, has been on this planet for over 3 billion years. 600 million years of that, the nervous system was evolving, and our ancestors needed to really learn quickly from threats, from bad events, from pain. So we have a brain that is very affected. It's the negativity bias of the brain. I say it's like Velcro for bad, Teflon for good. We are very affected by negative experiences, not so affected by positive ones. Positive ones slide off. That's like Teflon. So it's especially, you just remember, someone says something mean to you, you remember it and you think about it for the rest of the day. You go to a job interview, or your boss gives you a performance review, says 9 things are wonderful, 1 room for improvement. What do you think about it? So that's why it's important to pay attention to the negative as you need it, but Mother Nature has tilted the playing field of the brain toward the negative. If you tilt toward the positive, looking for authentic, real experiences that are beneficial, you just level the playing field.
So, speaking about that, what can we do about the negative biases of the brain?
Yeah, and my answers now will be much shorter. I needed to give you a long answer to that deep question. Now it can be shorter. Yeah. So what can we do about it? One is notice when something negative is arising in your mind. And it's not bad. It's just unpleasant, and it's often harmful. You're worried about something. You're irritated about something. You're criticizing yourself about something. Notice when that's happening. Figure out what to do about it. Be mindful of it. Step back from it. Observe it. Decide for yourself what's true about it, what's useful. You might decide that you're worried about nothing. Or you might decide that it was a little thing, but you don't need to carry it around for the rest of the day. Decide how big it is for yourself. You get to decide inside the temple of your own mind. And also, make a plan. The plan might be to just move on. The plan might be to drink a cup of tea and calm down and move on. The plan might be to tell a friend. Maybe your plan, you think to yourself, I'm never doing business with you again. Yeah? Your plan might be, I need to learn something. I need to become more skillful in some way to deal with this situation in the future. Maybe your plan is, I need to go to a good college, like the college where you are. You make a plan. You take action. That's important. Okay, that's with the negative. And then meanwhile, in your ordinary day, usually in small ways, look for true, authentic experiences that are beneficial. Like I said, they're usually the small ones. Your friend smiles at you. You finish some work. You wash your face. You eat something good. You smell curry. You smell spice. I like Indian food. You feel inside yourself determination to keep going. Maybe you're in a college that is prestigious and difficult and challenging, and you know every day, I worked hard today. That's all I can do. When you have those experiences, do what I say, take in the good, so you stay with the experience to help your brain be changed by it.
So taking all the small, positive, unmeasured things and change our brain.
Yeah, and the simple way I think of this, for me, this is not about looking for pleasure. Pleasure is fine, but the real fundamental purpose for me about all this is to think about what does it take to grow mental resources? What does it take to grow those? And the primary major way to grow mental resources is to look for small, authentic, beneficial experiences 10, 20 times a day for a breath or 2 or 3 at a time, 10 seconds, 30 seconds at a time, many little times a day, and to feel it, to stay with it. There's a famous saying, neurons that fire together wire together. So it's very mechanical in a way. The longer those neurons fire together, the more intensely they fire together, the more they fire together throughout drawing on different networks that contact your whole body, the bigger the trace that will be left behind. And therefore the steeper your learning curve and growth curve will be over the course of your day. For example, people want to grow their business, right? You want a growth curve for your business. What's your own personal growth curve? The most powerful way to steepen the growth curve for your business is to steepen your own mental growth curve. And the way to do that is to maximize your gain from the experiences you are already having over the course of your day. And that little difference, experience after experience after experience, between no gain, a little gain, or a lot of gain, that delta, it's like calculus. That delta, that degree, that increment, that little difference is small in one single experience. But adding up over the course of your day, it makes the difference between starting a day here and ending here, or starting a day here and ending there. And then that difference means instead of starting here with your life and ending here, it means starting here with your whole life and ending there.
So should we go to the next question?
Sure.
You have always been of the opinion that our brain has 2 kinds of setting, the green zone and the red zone. So what are these settings?
Yeah, that is a kind of loose way of describing a difference that we all know. We know the difference between feeling really worried about something and having a sense of inner peace. We know the difference. We know the difference between feeling really hurt when we're with someone or feeling full of love. We know the difference. And that difference also appears inside the body. The difference between the fight or flight stress system with hormones like cortisol and adrenaline that I associate with the red zone. And we also know that what it feels like in the body when the heart rate slows, when the parasympathetic wing of the nervous system is more activated, when natural endorphins give us a sense of less pain, and also when natural opioids, these are in the brain, these are neurochemicals, give us a sense of more well-being. We notice the difference. And it's normal to go into the red zone, okay, but you are paying a price every time you go into the red zone. It has a cost. It feels bad, and it wears on your body. Any single time, unless it's a big trauma, we're tough. We're tough animals. We can, one time, okay. But time after time after time after time wears us down. It's including the little stresses of everyday life, including on social media. Little moments where someone writes something and you go, I don't like that. Or even simply being bombarded with stimuli. Our ancestors, until very recently, including our hominid ancestors, before Stone Age humans, our ancestors that evolved the brain we have lived at the pace of a walk, doing the same thing every day, pretty much, with the same people, living with 50 people, basically, most of their lives. That's a very different way of life than the life we have today. And our brain we can handle lots of incoming information. I like television, I like social media, I like the internet. Okay, but even that is kind of stressful to be bombarded. So the point is, come out of the red zone as soon as you can, authentically. Come out of it. Recognize that it's costly for you. And meanwhile, stay in the green zone as much as you can. You're still working. You're still dealing with other people. You're still getting things done. But you have a sense of well-being about it. Well-being is the green zone. The green zone has a sense of well-being in it. And while in the green zone, take in green zone experiences. Take them into your nervous system in the way I'm describing. Use positive neuroplasticity to take in green zone experiences, because that will increase your ability to deal with challenges in life from the green zone rather than getting upset about it. You see? It's a very positive cycle that makes sense. I think of it, to finish, a little bit like a sailboat. A sailboat has a keel. I flipped a sailboat with no keel. I appreciate the keel, that piece of wood or metal or fiberglass that's down beneath. Well, taking in green zone experiences and building inner strengths, psychological resources as a result, is like lengthening your keel in the water. So then, as the waves of life come at you, including big storms, they don't flip your boat. They may rock your boat, but you can come back to center more quickly. And therefore, you can take on bigger challenges because you know you will not be flipped over by them.
So mindfulness is not like fake till you make it.
Oh, no.
No, not at all.
Not at all. I think that, how can I put it? So two things here. One is, we always have to be true to what's actually happening.
Yes,
to me, that's the foundation of science, and it's the foundation of spiritual practice. Somewhere in the Western Bible, there's a sentence, "The truth shall set you free." Or as my root teacher, the Buddha, taught, ignorance is the deep cause of suffering. So we always want to be truthful about what is happening around us and what is happening inside us. Now that said, it is also all right to deliberately create experiences inside our minds. Most of the beneficial experiences we're having that we can take in if we want to, are already happening. Like, I am enjoying talking with you. You are smart, and I also feel honored that I know other people are watching this presentation, this conversation, and it will be of use to them later. That makes me happy naturally, just right now. I can take in that experience. Great. I can also, just like you or the people watching, I can also deliberately create an experience. Like, for example, I can think of someone who is suffering that I feel compassion for. Or I can deliberately think of something else that makes me happy. Like, I'm fascinated by science. And I can think about the recent findings of these neutron stars that smashed into each other and sent waves through the fabric of space-time from a collision hundreds of light years away, millions of light years away. So, okay, the point is, or also, if I am facing a challenge, I can call up the feeling in my body I had while rock climbing that makes me strong to deal with someone who's, I gotta be strong now. Okay? So the point is, it's all right to create experiences as long as they feel true to you. So it's okay. You're not fake. I was not faking it when I thought of someone I feel compassion for, or I thought about those neutron stars smashing together. I was not faking it. I mean, I was deliberately creating an experience. But once it was happening in my mind, and therefore inside my brain, it was a real pattern of mental neural activation. And so it's all right to deliberately create experiences. In fact, that's foundational to coping and mental health.
Speaking about Buddha, you have a book in his name, Buddha's Brain, which connects neuroscience with ancient wisdom. What is it actually about, and why have you named the book as Buddha's Brain?
That's interesting. Well, if you want to get good at something, study people who are good at it,
Okay.
right? If you want to get good at business, study people who are good at business. If you want to get good at playing tennis, study people who are good at tennis. So I thought, well, let's think about what is happening inside the brain of someone who seems to, as far as we know, 2,500 years ago, someone who seemed to be very wise, very peaceful, very strong, and very kind. Wow, what's happening inside that brain? So for me, it's like reverse engineering, in a sense. You work backwards from what is happening in there. That's why I did that. Also, as far as we know, the Buddha described his own enlightenment and attainment as the result of his own hard work. Yeah, so he talks about his own transformation in a very psychological way that connects well with modern science. He becomes a naturally interesting person to think about what was happening in there. And then more generally, as we move on our path, wherever we are on the path, as we move on the path, as we heal ourselves, as we become happier, as we become wiser and wiser, maybe as we move toward the ultimate. I don't feel enlightened, yet. I don't feel that way. But as we move toward in that direction, we can learn from the people who are one step farther than us. And so what that book is about is trying to understand, based on modern science, what are some of the factors that we can draw upon to become steadier in our mind, to become more mindful? What are the factors we can draw on to have more balance, more equanimity? What can we do to steepen our growth curve? The Buddha had a real growth curve, obviously. And also, what can we do, based on modern science, to stimulate the networks of love and relationship to help our whole world? And in the process of stimulating them, since neurons that fire together wire together, we are strengthening them as well. So, plus, it just seemed like a really cool idea. What in the world is going on inside the brain of a Buddha or any other person who's really wise, really effective, and really happy?
Sometimes we make the distinction between the brain and the mind. Is there a difference?
Oh yeah, that's why I said my long answer earlier. The brain is material.
Okay.
It's in the material universe, including the aspects of energy, since E equals mc squared. Energy and mass are two aspects of one material universe. On the other hand, information is immaterial. The word, the sound waves that are coming out from my mouth here and reaching the microphone, those are material, right?
Okay.
And then the electromagnetic waves that travel through space and come back down for us to talk right now, that's all material. But the meaning of the sounds I am making, that is immaterial. Information is immaterial. So we have two aspects of reality: material, matter, immaterial, information. In some sense, rupa and nama in Sanskrit. We have these two fundamental aspects, rupa and nama. So those are distinct. So in that sense, the mind, scientists, when they use the word mind, essentially they're referring to the information represented by the nervous system. It's not a spiritual word. It's a technical word that applies to the information in the nervous system. That information, because it's immaterial, you cannot weigh a meaning. You cannot touch a thought or an emotion. It's immaterial, but it still exists. It still exists. So that's the fundamental distinction. And the other thing to finish on is to say that the causality flows both ways. The material hardware constrains, conditions, and constructs the immaterial software of the information flowing through the nervous system, which is the necessary basis for our experiences, our phenomenology, our consciousness. All right. So causality flows from hardware to software, but causality also flows from software to hardware, because the logic of our conversation here, or as you do a math problem or proof, you're working your way through the steps, or you think of the flow of music, or just the dance of interaction between two people. Those flows of information have causal power as well. Those flows of information enlist underlying material neural activity to proceed, but they have a power and a logic of their own. So causality flows both ways. That's why really respecting the degree to which the mind is embedded in the brain does not reduce mind merely to the meat. The meat and the mind both co-arise, both are really important. And if anything, appreciating the degree to which the mind is embedded in the body, for me, makes me very, very grateful for the body and its evolution. Also makes me humble, like I got to take care of my body. And also makes me appreciate that we can use our mind to change our body. We can use our mind to change our brain to benefit our mind, which gives us fantastic opportunities. Because if we stimulate parts of the brain, we strengthen them. And if we stimulate green zone, in effect, processes in the brain, we strengthen them. So we can use our mind to change our brain, to change our mind for the better, for our own sake and that of all beings.
Can I ask you a personal question?
No.
Please.
Yes.
How is it that you look so young?
Well, I have good genetics, I guess. I'm 65. The honest answer, I think, is I try to maintain qualities of play and delight and curiosity, like a child would. And one of the nice things, by the way, about play and delight and interest is that it stimulates factors in your brain. They're called neurotrophic factors. And what those neurotrophic factors do is they increase the plasticity of the brain. They increase the degree to which it can be affected by our experiences. So, if you are having a beneficial experience and you want to really help it sink in, a good way to do that is to bring a quality of delight or playfulness or surprise, interest to the experience, because that will increase neurotrophic activity, which will increase the impact of the beneficial experience. I think that's a thing I honestly do. And the other thing I think is resist less, love more. Yeah, as we go through life, a teacher of mine has the metaphor of a rope. Life is like a rope going through our hands, or we're sliding down the rope or sliding up the rope and whatever, but it's the rope. If we squeeze the rope, that creates friction. If we resist what's happening, that creates friction, and friction wears us down. So I try to resist as little as possible. That does not mean do not be strong. People who know me, my wife and the people in my world, they know that I'm polite, but I'm very prepared to be firm if I need to be, including for the sake of others, to stand up for other people. So being strong is different than resistance. The difference is that you can accept what is happening with your heart remaining open while you are very firm for what is important.
So it is a kind of self-caring, not selfishness.
That's a very interesting question. I think both. In other words, we take care of ourselves,
Okay.
but interestingly, in the process of filling ourselves up, we have more we can use to take care of others. And taking care of others gives us opportunities to feel connected and to feel of worth. Like you have given me a beautiful opportunity here to feel of worth. Very wonderful, smart people in India, a country I have profound respect for. Civilization, it's ancient. When my great-great-great-great-grandparents were running around Europe in, I don't know what, starving to death, your civilization was very mature, very developed, mathematicians, philosophers, great teachers. So the fact that you are interested in what I'm doing and we have a chance to work together, that also fills me up. And again, in a nice positive cycle, a nice upward spiral.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So we spoke about well-being, we spoke about our mental resources, our brain's negativity bias, the difference between the mind and the brain. So I think we should go towards the practical applications of it.
All right.
Okay.
Good.
So you have a kind of an acronym, HEAL, for changing the brain for the better. What is it? How can we change the brain for the better?
It's a great question. So to put it a certain way, we're talking about the process of states becoming traits.
Okay.
States are passing. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, desires, they pass. They come and they go. They are unreliable. They come and they go. And they tend to be very dependent upon external conditions. Traits, in the broad sense, I'm using that word, are enduring. They are reliable. They last. We take them with us wherever we go. So let's suppose that, I'll ask you a question. What is a strength, a trait, a psychological resource that you would like to grow more of inside yourself?
I think it would be compassion.
Okay, very good. That's very honorable. So let's say you want to grow more compassion. We could say also maybe you want to grow more confidence. Or maybe you want to be more skillful in running a meeting or managing other people. Or maybe you want to, I'll leave it at that. So how do you acquire that? Right? Okay. And the way you acquire it is first, you must experience what you want to grow. You must have an experience of compassion or confidence or how to run a meeting skillfully. You must experience it. We do not have the technology, and I hope we never do actually, that we can put a cable in the back of the brain, like Neo in the movie The Matrix, and suddenly fly a helicopter or become more compassionate. I think that would be a terrible thing. So we must experience it. But second, we must turn that passing experience, which is a state, into a lasting change in neural structure or function. Otherwise, there is no gain, there is no learning, there is no change, there is no increase in trait compassion or trait confidence or trait skillfulness, trait leadership. See what I mean? So it's two stages, the fundamental process of learning. And the second stage is critically important. Okay. People forget the second stage all the time. So my acronym HEAL, H-E-A-L, is a fundamental summary of the neuropsychology of learning. And I'm using the word learning broadly. The neuropsychology of healing, of development, of transformation, of progress toward awakening even. It's a fundamental process that has two necessary and sufficient steps. First, activation, state, have an experience. And second, installation, having there be a physical change left behind. Okay, so I use that acronym to summarize the process. H stands for have, have the experience. That's the activation stage of learning. The other three letters are about the installation stage of learning, which I'm focusing on because it's necessary and people forget it all the time. So it's a great opportunity. E in HEAL stands for enrich. Enrich the experience. In other words, you can engage known factors in research that increase learning. And I think of 5 factors for enriching. I'll say them quickly. You don't have to do them all. And on my website, people can learn about this. So, and again, it's natural. We all know how to do this. I'm just trying to draw attention to something we know that is natural, but we often overlook. And so we don't gain from our experiences. They're pleasant, but we don't learn anything from them. So 5 factors to enrich experiences to increase change. One is duration. The longer you experience it, the more it's going to sink in. Like stay with it for a breath, or 2, or 10. Stay with it. Second, intensity. Let it be intense. Let it be loud or big in your mind. Really feel the beneficial experience. Really feel the compassion. Really feel the confidence. Really feel what it's like to be a good leader of a meeting. Third factor, I call it multimodality. Basically, it means feel it in your body. Let the experience be rich. Don't just let it be a good idea. Have it be a good sensation, a useful feeling. Fourth factor, novelty. See what's new, what's fresh about the experience. That's where those neurotrophic factors can come in as well, a sense of delight or childlike playfulness. And then last, relevance, salience. Why does this experience matter to me? Like let's say you are wanting to develop more compassion inside yourself. So when you are having an experience of compassion or something related to it, like a feeling of connection or friendliness with other people or empathy for the suffering of others, when you're having that experience, recognize why it is personally meaningful. Why do you value it? And as you value it, it will create more of a lasting change inside you. So those are the 5 factors of enriching. You don't need to do all of them. The way they usually work in the flow of in the moment, you stay with the experience for a breath or 2 or 3 while feeling it in your body and noticing what's enjoyable about it. Okay? A, the third factor, stands for absorb. We take the experience into ourselves. We feel like it's sinking in. We, in effect, intensify the memory-making machinery of the brain. So, in effect, we have a real big experience, using a metaphor, sitting on the sponge of the brain. So, making the experience big is like enriching, and making the brain more like a sponge, so it receives the experience, is absorbing. Those are the 3 fundamental steps of learning. It's like a fire. You light the fire, so you have fire. Second, enriching, you protect the fire and add fuel to it. And third, absorbing, you take in the heat of the fire. That's the essence of the learning process. And when you know how to learn, you can apply that that profoundly useful skill to anything you want to grow inside yourself. I think of psychological resources as like superpowers. Okay, in a sense, I read a lot of comic books as a kid, and a lot of science fiction too. And so, like superpowers. All right, compassion is a superpower. Confidence is a superpower. Leadership is a superpower, etc. Learning is the superpower of superpowers because it is the superpower that grows the rest of them. That's the fundamental process of learning. Have, enrich, and absorb. Now, additionally, optionally, link means be aware of negative and positive at the same time. Make the positive bigger. For example, off to the side, you could feel hurt. Maybe someone was mean to you, maybe a boss was critical, maybe a professor was just dismissed you, I don't know. Is hurt off to the side. Maybe that hurt in the moment stirs up old feelings of inadequacy, being less than others, or self-doubt. Very normal, very normal. To work with that, to help that, a person could be aware of others who like you, others who care about you. Maybe your cat likes you, your partner, your friend, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, somebody likes you. Also, maybe you can bring up memories of other times you were successful. Maybe here in class you said something dumb and the professor flipped you away. All right. But maybe you can remember other times you did or said something that was smart. Whatever you can do, you can make the positive experience bigger than the negative. And because neurons that fire together wire together, positive will associate with the negative, soothing it, easing it, gradually replacing it. It's a little bit like the mind is a garden. The mind and the brain are like a garden. And when we plant flowers in the garden, they crowd out the weeds, prevent the weeds. And also we can use flowers in the fourth step, linking, to pull the weeds themselves. So that gradually the positive eventually replaces the negative. We remember bad things that happened. You, let's say in my little example, you will remember that that professor was critical of you and embarrassed you, but when you think of it, it won't bother you so much. You won't keep thinking about it. And eventually when you do think about it, your emotional needle will hardly move at all. So that's the fundamental process of heal. It's natural. We can use it ourselves many times a day. We can teach it to others. If we want to help others gain as much as possible in a work environment, let's say we're a manager and we want our staff to become anything, more motivated, more creative, more able to work together as a team, more confident, more willing to take risks. We can do things as a manager to help our team become more effective. We're teaching them how to learn. We can give them the superpower of superpowers, and then they can use that superpower to gain the other superpowers. We can do this with our children. We can do this with our clients if we're a therapist. We can do this with our students if we're a teacher. To finish, I find it so strange and so interesting that people who are interested in the people around them becoming more effective, like a business leader, or people who are interested in others learning and growing, like a therapist or a coach in business, a business coach. I find it so interesting that people who want to grow and learn and develop themselves, and also want others to learn and grow and develop themselves, almost never think about how learning actually happens. They don't think about it, and they don't often use that to increase learning. Now, in more academic environments, yes, teachers do think about that, and that's wonderful and good. But when we move out of academic environments, where teachers do think about how learning happens, and we move more into what could be called social learning or emotional learning, developing emotional intelligence, developing social intelligence, or developing happiness or well-being or resilience. Those, or changing what it feels like in your body, helping your body have more of a sense of calm pleasure inside it as you go through your day. Those kinds of learning, emotional, social, motivational, somatic, attitudinal, even spiritual forms of learning, that are the most important forms of learning of all, many people would say. It is so interesting and unfortunate that there has not been more attention to how those forms of learning happen, so that we can steepen the growth and learning curves of ourselves and other people.
Okay, so can I ask you another personal question?
Sure.
Who's your favorite superhero?
Well, that's great. There are two from the Marvel comics. I don't know if people will recognize these. One is called the Silver Surfer.
Okay.
He's like travels between the galaxies, and he's a messenger. And to me, he was always very mysterious. He's not bad. He helps, but just the idea of being able to travel between the stars and the galaxies just seemed fantastic to me. All right. The other, my favorite superhero is Doctor Strange.
Oh.
He's a wizard. He lives in New York and he has magical powers. And I always thought that was really interesting too. Someone who lives in New York and looks like anybody else walking down the street, and yet he's a wizard, battling the forces of evil. So.
Okay. So HEAL is an acronym for have an experience, enrich that experience through duration, intensifying it, then novelty, then making it more relevant, and then absorbing it, and then finally linking it.
Yeah, that's the full process, and people can use it in different ways in different situations. I write about it with a lot of detailed applications, fine. But the essence is really simple. When you are having a beneficial experience, look for what you want to grow inside yourself. And when you are having it, stay with it, feel it in your body, and recognize what is enjoyable about it. That will all increase the neuroplastic impact of that experience. So you will retain, you will keep more of the benefits from it.
So the final question for this interview. You have a vision in which you believe that a critical mass of the human brain should be centered in the green zone. And you say that this would change world history. What do you mean by it?
That's a deep question. I'll try to keep it short. So throughout history of our species, recent evidence is that people who had bodies like yours and mine have lived on this planet for about 300,000 years at least. And then before that, their ancestors who were using tools and making tools lived on this planet for at least 2.5 million years. Okay? And then before that, we have our other ancestors. Well, during that long time, it was impossible to reliably meet the three fundamental needs of every animal, including human animals: the need for safety, satisfaction, and connection. We could not protect until very recently, we could not protect people against pain, and we could not keep them safe from being eaten by lions, things like that, tigers. Second, we could not feed everyone on the planet reliably. We could not make sure that everyone on the planet could have a reasonably satisfying and comfortable standard of living. And also, until very recently, for connection, we could not protect people from violence coming at them from other bands and inside their own band, and we could not help people live together in peace. That's just the truth. But in the last generation or two, something fundamental has happened. A new possibility has opened up. Scientists, policymakers agree. We have the technology today. We have the physical means to protect people from pain and assure their safety, to feed everyone and help them have a reasonably comfortable life. Not a rich Donald Trump life, but a reasonably comfortable life. And we also have the ability to help people to live together under the rule of law in a reasonable way, civil society, to protect people from life. Think about, I don't know if you've seen the TV show Game of Thrones, but throughout history, a few people had a good life, most people had a horrible life. That's the story of most history. But in the last generation or two, the physical resources and technology have now appeared that would enable everybody to stay in the green zone. But how do we do it? How we do it, I think, in part, is we affect the world outside. But think about wealthy countries like my country, America, India, becoming a wealthy country, developed countries. There's still much conflict, much suffering, much poverty, much unhappiness, much extreme inequality. All right? There is natural inequality, and then there is the inequality that exploded since agriculture came in 10,000 years ago and surpluses became available. So it's not enough to just change the world outside. We must also change the world inside. And as people center themselves increasingly in the green zone, they become harder to manipulate. They become harder to manipulate with fear and anger, harder to manipulate with greed and frustration, the second need, and they become harder to manipulate with grievances against other groups that are very easy to use, especially by authoritarian leaders. We've seen that story throughout history, and we see it in the world today. It's very easy to manipulate us. We're tribal beings. Very easy to manipulate people into feeling a grievance against another group and then desire to attack that other group. But when you again and again and again grow that green zone brain and body really all together, then when people try to manipulate you with fear, you're not so frightened. When they try to make you greedy and only think about yourself, you're not so greedy because you already feel content. You already feel filled up. You already are happy. You have a sense of enoughness already inside. And also, when you cultivate this green zone brain, you grow compassion, you grow empathy, and you grow a sense of justice inside yourself. You want justice for others as well as for yourself. So again, you're harder to manipulate. And my hope, to finish, is that if we can get a critical mass, some number, 100 million, maybe a billion. I think a billion is about the tipping point.
Yes.
If we get roughly 100 million or a billion people centered in the green zone, most seconds of most days, then I think there will be a critical mass and a tipping point that will change the course of human history. There will still be quarrels. Two men will be interested in the same woman. Two restaurants will open on the street. Only one will survive. Things will happen. There will be arguments. And there will be quarrels. There will be politics. Nothing. This will not be a utopia. It will not be perfect. But we have the opportunity, as the whole human tribe, to reduce extreme inequalities, to take care of everybody, and to live together in a sustainable peace and prosperity. And I hope, I doubt I will live to see that in my own life. I hope my children, and especially their children, may come to see it on our planet Earth, our precious planet Earth, for the whole human tribe.
So, in the words of Dr. Rick Hanson, green brain, green world.
Green brain, green world. And we build those green brains to finish, one experience at a time. There's a teaching in the Buddhist tradition, maybe I'll leave it with you here. It's one of my favorite simple sayings. The teaching goes, it's from the Dhammapada. Think not lightly of good, saying it will not come to me. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being on our project. And I would like to leave you all with this quote from Shantideva from his book Bodhisattva Charyavatara. By the virtues of my merits, may all beings everywhere, tormented by suffering of mind and body, find physical comfort and mental joy. By the virtues of my merits. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for being on our project. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.